listening to Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing.
Anything can happen Friday. The art and cultural side of Southeast Asia.
Hi, welcome back to Durian ASEAN. You're with Gowri,
Grace, and this is Arlene.
and you're with us on Anything Can Happen Friday. And today we will be discussing about something that is not usually talked about, and
Are you sure?
probably pretty controversial as well. We're talking about waxing and Brazilian waxing, to be specific. And to help us out with the discussion, we have somebody in the house today. She is a YouTuber, a TV host, and also a singer-songwriter. Her name is Jenn. Hello.
Hi, Jen.
Thank you for having me on the Durian ASEAN Awesome.
Thank you for joining us today.
Woohoo!
And hopefully you can enlighten us as well on the whole idea of Brazilian waxing. But
Yeah.
first, let's start with perhaps a little history to waxing. How far back has it begun, and how it's viewed in different culture? I think so far from what I've read, it dates back to the Egyptian
Yes.
Greece times, that having pubic hair was already considered uncivilized.
And apparently it was two main reasons why they completely do the whole Brazilian wax. Is one of them for hygiene purposes, and another one is to kind of showcase that they are representing their profession, which is prostitution. And I thought that was quite interesting.
Right.
Yeah. And if you think about that, that was history. But what right now, we women, we strip it all off, and it's a form of empowerment, don't you think? Am I wrong for saying that?
It goes both ways.
Well, maybe because for Arlene and I, it was our first time, so we
Yeah.
haven't really gotten that
So
far
you're not
to
empowered yet,
to
Gowri?
empowerment. I think for us, it's still at the hygienic.
Well, you mentioned it's your first time.
For Arlene and myself, yeah, but I think
Yeah.
Grace has done it a couple of times.
Yeah.
Grace, you want to share?
Yeah.
Do you
Already,
do you do it
my
for-
experience.
Do you do it for empowerment, or well, what is your
At
motivation?
first, my experience was very innocent.
Innocent? What do you mean by
Actually, yeah, hers started out as a mistake, right?
Yeah, it was a
mistake.
mistake. So I paid for this package for waxing, and then I went to this shop in Bangsar, and yeah, I just went for a very simple waxing, legs and armpit. Then the usual one, which I never heard of Brazilian waxing before. Yes, I had no idea what it was about it.
So
How old or young were you then?
I was just a couple of years younger than this. And she's
not
not
telling you
that
that.
young. I was like, okay, what is that? Okay, let me just give it a try. It's fresh and new sounds. That's how it
she just thought
sounded
it's,
to me.
it's probably some imported wax from Brazil.
Okay,
that they're
so
gonna use.
Yeah, it sounded very exotic, so I went for it. And there I was. I went through a pain and a torture. Yeah.
Okay, now here's my thing. Like when you're lying down, right? So obviously you're having things removed, hair removed from you. And then at the moment when the waxer, would you call that a waxer, a wax specialist? How would we call them? A
I think
waxer.
so.
I'll call it waxer. And the waxer goes to your,
Private area.
your unmentionables. And at the moment he's doing that, would you say, could you stop?
No, I didn't say.
You just let
it's
it
part
happen.
of wax. I was like, hey, let's just expose myself more.
Too late at that point.
And I paid for this, so let's just
Yeah.
bear it. But it was so
she even paid
painful.
up front.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was just all paid, whole package.
But then the end result, how was it?
I loved it. It was like, oh, baby skin again.
And I think going back to the discussion,
Yeah.
they actually found copper razors in Egypt and Mesopotamia about 3,000 years ago. So that is quite some time. That since back then women started becoming self-conscious, or probably like you mentioned as well, as due to their profession.
Yeah.
But it seems
But
like
there was
it's also
there is no waxing, right? It's more like just removing.
yeah, just hair removal,
pubic
pubic
hairs.
hair. Yeah.
But what about waxing?
I think waxing itself probably gained attention when they introduced the bikini.
Yes,
in the US.
70s or 80s.
And
Yeah.
also in the 1960s with the mod movement, because that's when all the miniskirts started coming into the picture, and that's
unsightly
when,
hair would
right,
be,
Yeah.
and all the waxing strips started becoming more and more popular among women.
And the waxing became even more popular among women, mainly because of hygienic purposes.
Yeah.
Because with hair, especially the private area, which is always closed, it sort of like gives certain scent and odors. So because of that, like older generation, they used to use not a specific waxing cream, but they made use of honey or sugar. To remove pubic hair. So that's a part of the how wax all started, mainly because of hygienic purposes as well.
Right. And I think the first one, not talking about wax, but the first company actually to introduce safety razors was actually Gillette, where they introduced it to women, and I think they're still one of the biggest razor companies go to for women, I think, because they have all this beautiful pink color razors with like flowers on the packaging that makes you feel like, oh, okay.
Oh yeah, women can use razors as well.
And that started with a campaign called the First Great Anti-Underarm Hair Campaign.
Anti-underarm.
This was in the 1920s, by the way. Right. So, and it was featured in the Harper's Bazaar magazine. And then later on, with the bikinis being introduced in 1940s, so that's when it was more, it wasn't compulsory, but it was just generally expected that women should not have any hair in the underarm, in the pubic area.
And so I'm curious to know, this is more of the Western culture. What about in Asia, or specific just Southeast Asia?
Maybe we can talk about the perception of hair removal in Asian countries or Asian cultures as well.
Well, I mean, I'm interested in history a lot, and especially in the past, where I've been reading about Chinese history. You know, in the past, Chinese emperors have concubines, right?
Yes.
So whenever he find a concubine that he wants to have sex with, so the first night, usually prior to the first night, the helper of the concubines would actually remove all the hair on the body hair.
Okay.
Then she would have sex with the emperor.
So I find then hair was something that was not viewed as attractive.
And not sexy, not attractive. Is considered as something that probably a peasant's wife would have, but not an emperor's concubine.
Because that represents cleanness, purity, and also, like, you know, the person really maintains oneself in a way.
Also, it's a form of social status in a way. Because not many people can afford the time, the energy, as well as
it's true. Even Brazilian wax right now, it's expensive. It's a luxury to go through that amount of pain, you know. It's just
luxury to That's the way to put it.
The amount of money you pay to go through that pain as well.
But it also means that beauty is not cheap and it's not easy. To maintain beauty is to actually invest in pain. Would you agree with that?
I mean, I would agree. Think about just your eyebrows. Like, we go through threading or tweezers and stuff. It's actually pain. But the result of it, you get something so much more polished and neat. And I think that's... What do you think? Is it more for us women or for someone else to look at us?
Do we do it for ourselves? Or
Well, I can give my background. I mean, my side of story, because I grew up in my teenage life, and also even up until adulthood to some point, I used to be very feminist. I'm saying feminist in a very, you know, not burning bra, but not shaving anything at all sort of feminist. Yes. So I actually had my first experience of shaving my legs, right?
Okay.
Back in a couple of years ago, after I finished my university years. So you can imagine, from high school until university, I was an ugly duckling.
Are you generally very hairy, or?
I am, because I am actually, because I come from a very mixed race background. So a part of me actually has some I would say Indian or South Asian origin. So that's where the hairy part comes in.
Right.
Yeah.
So welcome to our waxing world.
but it's it's interesting when you first mentioned that wax. To get yourself to go through the Brazilian waxing is a form of empowerment, because if you ask a traditional feminist, they wouldn't agree with you necessarily. They will, of course, they have their own argument to it. But for me, coming from different perspective, I would agree partially on it, because I think that to feel empowered is to have control over what you want to do with your body.
Yes.
And of course, waxing is a choice. I mean, if you are doing it because society tells you that, this is the only way for you to attract men, I think that's not empowering. But if you're doing it because you feel that, hey, I have the means of doing it, I want to do it, and I feel beautiful doing it, and I think that's definitely a form of empowerment.
For me personally, empowerment comes from you go through so much pain.
Right.
To be honest, it's the kind of pain that you punch a guy's in the nuts and you times that for 30 minutes. That's literally how you feel.
Exactly.
And for me, after you go through all of that, you just
Right.
I'm not that susceptible to pain. I feel good. I feel empowered. I'm strong. And this is kind of like how when I work out, for example, I go to the gym, you hold on to weights, and it's just so
much pain.
painful. But then after that, you look yourself in the mirror and like, hey, I feel good. So that for me is my sense of empowerment.
Okay.
Yeah. What about you both? Like your first
I
time?
think different people have different interpretation of empowerment. Grace, do you feel empowered after knowing Brazilian waxing?
Well,
you didn't
for
actually
sure,
come from Brazil.
I feel more confident about myself that I've done this, and then I can literally wear my bikinis without any showing my bushes.
You say bushes. You're giving us an insight to your forest.
A little bit of that. Yes, it's just like hair removal from my legs, my armpit, and so on. And waxing is the safest way of removing your hair, so that's why I go for waxing, not threading
not
or
Gillette.
shaving.
Right. Not
No. Because I'm afraid of ingrowth hair as well as making hair thicker, and it's harder to remove after some time. So I usually recommend my friends, also families, to go for waxing. So after waxing, I feel very clean. That's the first thing I feel. Second, I feel confident.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we'll take a short break first before we come back to me and share my experiences. But before that, I just want to add on that the reason it's called Brazilian is because it's really famous in Brazil, and that's because all their swimsuits, bikinis are made really, really small.
Yep.
So they don't really have a choice.
The size
but to
of-
actually,
the size of bikini is just like size of your thumb or something, just enough to cover your nipples.
And it all started around in the 1980s. And it also sort of became a very important part of their personal care as well. So I think if you go to Brazil, it will not really be a luxury. You'll probably find it like everywhere on the streets. Right.
It's like a way of life.
It's become like football. So yeah, we'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk more about our experiences. Maybe also the benefits and effects of Brazilian wax.
Anything can happen Friday. The art and cultural side of Southeast Asia.
Hello and welcome back to Duran ASEAN. You're with Gowri,
Grace, and this is Arlene.
and of course you're with us on Anything Can Happen Friday, and anything can happen. Today we're talking about Brazilian waxing.
For sure.
And of course we have Jenn in the house to help us with this discussion. So I guess we were talking about experiences much earlier about our waxing. So we were actually invited, Duran ASEAN was invited to the Strip Ministry of Waxing at the Curve.
And also at Mid Valley.
As well. So, like we mentioned, it was my first time and Arlene's first time as well. And I think it was quite an experience. When I walked in there, I was quite nervous. But when I told the lady that it was my first time, she was very nice though. She was walking me through the whole thing. Okay, don't be scared. You know, some parts will be painful, some parts are okay, and you just have to relax.
Were you noisy in the room?
I was very noisy. I just kept screaming like I didn't care. And when she yanked it, I just went, "Bah!"
How did you feel though at the moment when? Okay, do you go to the gynecologist regularly?
No, but I think I'm okay with that.
You're okay
I was
with
okay
exposing it that
bearing
way?
because I feel like she's just doing her job. You know,
Okay.
she's just sort of
She's seen it all.
cleaning me up and whatnot. So yeah, I didn't really mind it, and she was very careful, and she was
Informative as well, I
very
imagine.
informative as well.
She
so I
asked
think
you to
that
breathe?
helped. No, but she's like, okay, now tahana.
Oh, okay. Actually, I mean, to be very frank with you, I really like the strip ministerial
Yeah.
waxing in Mid Valley. The waxer, every time she pull out the hard wax, right? Because I use the hard wax, she always asks me, okay, take a deep breath, and actually it helped to reduce the pain for some reason.
Right. So that's one of the tips as well.
It actually is because for me, okay, I have to talk about workout because I kind of like compare like there's a certain similarity for both. So you're doing like weights, they're really heavy, but you move it out. When you blow it out, you just have that extra sense of energy, like outburst of energy, I think.
Exactly.
And so when they remove it, it's like I'm doing the sound effects for you guys right now. What up? And when you pull it out, that feeling, you just blow it out. I guess that kind of psychologically reduces the pain. I don't know. That's for me.
And she quickly put that cold antiseptic.
Yes. Yeah.
So it actually helped to
It numbs a bit. Yeah.
numbs a bit.
I think it helps for me when she's just talking to me and I'm distracted. I'm talking about something else, and she suddenly just yanks it. I'm like, whoa, okay.
That happened.
I think I think that I preferred that method because I was distracted and I don't really anticipate it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you, Grace?
I watch YouTube videos.
You watched
at least I'm
Jenn's video.
Yeah, any videos that would distract me.
okay.
Then please don't give me any signs that you just do whatever you have to do.
You don't talk at all.
I
You
do
just-
converse with the lady, but at times I just need to focus on my videos and just watch videos, and then she does it, so okay, she did it. Second time she did it, okay, that's painful, but she did it, yeah.
Were you screaming though?
No, I prefer
No.
not to scream.
Yeah, I didn't
hold
scream
it.
too.
I think you'll be like the ideal customer.
I'll hold it.
I'm the noisiest
Silent.
of all time because they at Bangsa where we've gone before. She remembered me, and not because of my face, but because of my voice. And each time she would do it, I would either sing to myself, and it's like, what's that song? I wanna swing from the chandelier. You can imagine full blown, loud volume and a high volume, and that was the kind of thing that I would kind of psych myself up to kind of like relax and sing. And so she remembers that, and so I was really embarrassed going in there. Oh, I remember you. You the girl sing a lot more than noisy one. I'm like, okay, thank you.
So
That's
everyone
funny.
got a free concert as well. Just probably passing by the.
But you know the ironic thing, because I never really take that much attention towards the hair down there.
Right.
I didn't realize that there are hair growing even until back to your anal there. Because she asked me, okay, turn back. I said, why? I need to do it at the back too. I was like, oh really?
I think that's what's the difference between a Brazilian wax and a normal wax? The normal, right? So the normal bikini wax is just the sides, and
The sides, yeah.
Brazilian is everything.
Yeah, everything throughout until your anal area, which is
But the buttocks area, it doesn't hurt, does it?
No.
It's not that bad, right?
The skin
Yeah.
is thicker there, so you don't feel that pain as much as you do front. But then you already go through the pain first, so maybe perhaps the back is the pain is lesser.
Yeah,
Could be.
I've had worse. And talking about that, there are different types of wax as well. I guess you tried the soft wax. And the hard wax, the way it works is that they put it on, then they let it sit, and then they yank it out. What
Yeah.
about the soft wax?
The soft one is basic. I think the soft one is called hot wax, right? So they just use a wooden spatula or stick, and then they just comb it on top of your, hoo-ha. And then from there they put the strip, and then they yank it out. Just at the moment, just wait for maybe like 5 seconds, and then But hot wax, I can imagine that you will like it's stayed for a while, right?
Yeah, it stayed for a while.
maybe a couple of seconds more.
But pretty much the same way, I guess.
I think it's the same concept, but I mean, based on a few experiences, based on from my friends, they've mentioned that hard wax, you feel a lot less pain, and some of them they even take painkillers.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's actually advisable for people who cannot really tolerate pain to take a pill or so, like an hour before.
Yeah.
So
And they
it
mention
helps.
also before 1 week before your period, you should have it, or something like that. I'm not too sure. But for me, at any time it just hurts.
Anytime
It
at all.
doesn't make any difference.
And there are some do's and don'ts as well when it comes to Brazilian waxing as well. I think they were saying that shaving is one thing. You should never shave because, like Grace mentioned, you get a lot of ingrown hair problems, and that makes it even harder. So for the next Brazilian trip, because it makes it even more difficult for them to remove the hairs. And
then you shouldn't scratch your private
Of
area too
course.
much, because after waxing, hair grows back again, and it's sort of like itchiness comes back, but you shouldn't scratch it, but you should apply like lotion or other stuff.
Oh,
just
that
to calm
one.
down.
That's far too familiar to me. And you're in a public area, for example, right now, and it's like, for example, itchy. You can't do that. You can't like scratch your unmentionables, and you just gotta like, wiggle your body a little bit.
right. And there are some what do you call it? Risk of waxing as well.
Risk.
I
Actually,
think-
you do get ingrown hairs as well. You're still susceptible to it, but not as much as shaving. I know that for sure.
Okay, and I think even in terms of infections, like what Grace mentioned earlier, especially I think this comes in after waxing when there's a lot of precautions that you have to take.
Yes.
Touching, scrubbing, or even scratching, even certain food that you take, even tight clothing.
Exercise as
within
well. You
24 hours.
You can't sweat too much.
And there's also another, of course, maybe a group of feminists came up with this. I don't know.
Why you look at me?
You were. So when you talk about how women put themselves through so much of pain, where you have this hot scalding wax on your skin and yanking it out, like what's the purpose of all this, and what's the point of going through so much pain unless it's really for yourself? But I think that has changed so much that it's becoming more for a visually and aesthetically
bikini.
pleasing kind of thing.
But men like it, right? I mean, do you ever
Too bad
come
we
to
don't
a man
have
and
a man
ask them,
here.
do you prefer women with bushes or without?
I would think generally men prefer bald.
Yeah.
I would think so. And for me, it's come to a point where when it's a little bit to its hairiest state, I become a bit self-conscious. And so this comes back to the argument of feminists. Are we doing this for ourselves, or are we doing it for others? And I guess, could it be a bit of both?
I think so.
Yeah, I think
when it comes to Malay community, right? A lot of girls, before they go for a wedding or before their marriage, they go for waxing, Brazilian waxing, and that's for their husbands, because it's by right they really need to go for it. So even a lot of my Malay friends, girlfriends, they went for Brazilian waxing, and of course I suggested my usual place in Manila. So I asked them, do you want to do it, or are you doing it for your husband? And then most of them said it's for the husband.
But that's also because the culture kind of dictates that beauty is in the eyes of your husband in a way.
Yes, and it's also because of the issue of premarital sex, I guess, because that's their first time presenting themselves to their husband, so they want to make sure that everything is clean and good and looks nice. But there should be different preferences as well. I think just to go through briefly, there's the American waxing, which doesn't really remove everything. There's still like a triangular area where there's hair. And when it comes to French waxing, they call it the landing strip. They remove everything except for a rectangular part. And of course, then there's the Brazilian waxing where everything is gone. So I think Arlene was mentioning earlier as well that I think back in France, when it was the time of Brigitte Bardot and everything, it was actually fashionable to have like full on hair.
There was the era, the 60s era where the women's movement started to become more significant, and people and women in those days, they wanted to be counterculture to the Hollywood culture. So a lot of people decided that, hey, we want to maintain some of our armpit hairs, some of our pubic hairs. But I think overall, if we are talking about whether a person should do it or not, it definitely depends on culture, fashion, mindset. I don't think there's a definitive answer to it, like you should do it or not do it.
Sure. Yeah, it's a preference. And actually, interestingly, I think in 2014, a research done, I think it's January 2014 or something like that, what was being said that the trend of Brazilian wax has kind of declined.
Okay.
The vegan eating, the feminist, they're actually on a rise. And I think that's quite interesting because we're going back to that era, the mindset you mentioned. So, I don't know, I just kind of feel that there's a rise in the Asian countries, and then there's like a dip in the American or Western countries where they become more feminist, would you
more
say?
Natural,
all natural. The vegan eating, the cold pressed juice drinkers,
And there's a lot of hipsters coming up as well.
Yes. Oh, there's just so many funny, I would say odd, peculiar feminist demeanors that I find quite out of this world. One of them, I want to just bring it up, that they would not wear sanitary pad.
Right.
Oh,
and all
then
over Instagram.
what about
it would just let it flow.
That kind of drew a huge outcry on Instagram and social media. So we're going to take another short break. When we come back, we will discuss about, is it possible to do your own waxing at home, and also a few tips for people who want to try waxing for the first time.
Awesome.
Anything can happen Friday. The art and cultural side of Southeast Asia.
Hello and welcome back to Duran ASEAN. You're still with Gowri.
And you're still with Grace.
And you're still with Arlene.
And still Jenn here in the house.
Hello guys, what's up?
And of course we're discussing Brazilian waxing if you just joined us. And for this part, I think before we move on, I just want to mention a few things about waxing or hair removal in the Indian culture. Maybe.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of hair to remove.
I know Indians always get left out with the last ones.
Dang.
I think it's definitely not something that is common. Maybe with the younger generation these days, it's much more acceptable and they are more conscious about how they present themselves. But I think it also has largely to do with the fact that if you look back at the culture, we're not really advised to expose our skins that much. Where the culture is very conservative, where you're wearing your sari, or it's always something long and covered up. So that's probably why they never really gave much thought to removing your armpit hair or even your leg hair, because we're not supposed to be wearing shorts. That's not something that's acceptable in the culture. But I think with the way that things are changing these days, a lot of young people are starting to wear shorts and tank tops, especially because it's a very hot country. And because of that, it's becoming more acceptable and more common as well when it comes to hair removal. But it's still, I can still imagine if I were to suggest this to my mom, and she would just be like, you're crazy.
But Gowri,
you're exposing your private.
But don't you think like the Bollywood culture has somehow shaped the younger generation, or
I think
the mindset of
that is one of the factors as well, because if you look at Bollywood movies, they all look like dolls, like sculptures, where everything is so clean and polished, and although it has a lot to do with maybe CGI and Photoshop, but I think it has definitely shaped the way.
But I would assume that in Indian culture, especially women with greater social status, removing bodily hair would be something that is acceptable, because I remember every time you want to groom your eyebrow, usually the cheaper version would be going to for threading,
the most common ones.
I would assume that they would have a similar concept for pubic hair too. I don't know.
I don't know, maybe because your eyebrows are actually like out in your face and it's not something that is private, somewhere hidden.
It's something that I can also say about this because I lived in Sri Lanka for 7 years and I have lots of Indian and Sri Lankan friends there. And because of that, I got to know about shaving and also going for threading my eyebrows. And yes, threading eyebrow is very popular among Indian community, including the Middle East country as well. Because part of it, they are conservative, so they only expose their faces. So it's very important to maintain certain, hairs and the features of their faces. But when it comes to private part, it's not really common practice for that community. So when I say, okay, I'm gonna go for my pubic hair removal, they'll be like, why do you do that?
How can you show your private
to them,
parts?
the concept of it's not acceptable. But other than that, legs, arms, eyebrows, it's totally normal for them.
Interesting.
And then they usually go for sugar waxing, not particularly waxing cream. So they go for traditional way of removing their hair. So it's something interesting I learned.
I'm interested to know more about the sugar waxing. Actually, I read about it, but I don't really know the mechanism.
So what they do is they have brown sugar. They will melt it in hot water and they stir it and they put honey as well. Then they will prepare the strips. So with a wooden stick they will prepare. So it's like soft waxing sort of a type. Then they remove it after.
This is an all natural product.
It's natural.
That's
That's why they go for natural
So
way
it
of
has
waxing.
2 ingredients: the sugar,
Predominantly,
honey.
And water.
Oh, right.
Can we do it at home?
You can practice because sugar becomes sticky depending on the amount of stuff that you put it in. Then after that you just strip it off.
So let's move on to...
Speaking of that, I feel that maybe we're going to talk about the do's and don'ts. And one of them is that your hair needs to be about a 1/4 inch, maybe a grain size, a rice grain size in terms of its length, in order for it to remove. Anything shorter, you will not be given it the
waxer
service.
take care of that?
If it's too short, you can't wax it off. But if it's too long,
they can always
the waxer will trim it to the actual favorable length. Or you can do it at home yourself, the trimming. That was something that I didn't know my first time when I was there, and it obviously was unruly. And I was there, and then the lady was like, this is your first time, right? And I'm like, yeah. So she was like trimming, and it was a very odd sensation for me. Because it's gentle, but at the same time, it's scissors, it's sharp. So I don't know. What about you guys? Have you guys gone through the trimming, your first trimming session before the actual waxing? Was it weird?
I've never done that before.
You feel the sensation of zip.
Yes.
And then you really feel it, and it's very sensitive down there, right? So when they actually trim it for you, you're like, oh, it's happening, but is the scissor gonna touch my flesh or something? I was imagining all that stuff.
I felt like I was getting my manicure or pedicure done. Like, okay,
this is one way of saying.
Like when they ask you, like, oh, do you want it shorter? Like, so you just cut off your nails. So I felt like it was pretty much the same thing. Like, okay, so I'm gonna cut it a bit shorter. I'm like, okay. Whatever that works for you. So maybe we can go back to Arlene's question about, can we actually do our own Brazilian wax at home? And I think there is an article here that says you can, but of course there are some guidelines that you have to follow. And the first one is choosing the right wax. I guess we mentioned that there's soft wax, hard wax. These days there's actually a lot of different wax strips available in the pharmacies, and it also all depends on your pain tolerance as well, on which one exactly that you can handle. And the next one is make sure nobody's at home.
Usually I do it when everyone's there.
Unless you want your boyfriend there or something. But I like the way they say it. It's an emotional experience, a journey between you and your crotch.
That's
nobody
very
else.
true.
Yes.
So that's why nobody should be at home, because it's like a very personal spiritual journey.
I've done that before.
You mean you've waxed yourself before, like proper hot wax? Or?
No, I bought the strip from the pharmacy, but then I asked for help whether it's waxable on my private area, and she said yes. So I went home, and what I did was, it was so peaceful moment. I put on the
like
candle.
A Zen moment?
Zen moment. Because I wanted to be just me. So I locked my door, of course. Then I put on music, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. And I had a warm tea. Then after that, okay, let's do it. So I looked at myself. And yes, there we go. I did it, but it was so painful. It was so painful. So I never did it again.
Right. The next step would be to pre-clean, I guess. To make sure that you clean out your
When you
pubic
say
area.
clean, do you mean like putting antiseptic, or it's just like water?
Well, according to this article, it works with just soap and water in the shower, but I guess antiseptic would help as well.
Definitely
to
for
clean
hygiene
up.
purposes.
And of course, then it goes on to the process of smearing the wax. But before that, like Jenn mentioned earlier, make sure that it's at the right length.
Yeah.
So I guess if you go to a waxing studio, they would know exactly. But when you're alone by yourself, it's probably a little hard to reach all the
you
way
can't
down
see the
there
nooks and corners,
measure, right?
you know, like especially
How'd you do
the
that,
anal
Grace?
region. You can't see unless you look yourself in the mirror, and
you have to use a mirror.
you have to use a mirror, don't you?
You have to big mirror.
So
And it's
very
quite like
handy.
you gotta bend your body forward and
flexible.
I think if you do like the American wax, maybe it's okay to do it at
Possible,
home.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But clean wax,
Like-
you really need to be detailed. Yeah. But you know where your pain is. So.
And I think the final steps are removing the wax residue, which is just as important, because if you leave
Definitely.
it on, it might cause some infection as well.
Yeah.
If it is stuck there, you don't know. And also to remove with a tweezer whatever had that the wax missed.
Yeah.
So it is actually possible, very possible, to do your own wax at home. And I think Grace has also given us a recipe.
Sugar and honey.
Yeah.
So to wrap up our discussion for today, maybe all of us can give some tips on the do's and don'ts, or maybe what are the important things that you must do before you go for your first ever Brazilian wax.
Okay.
Starting with Jenn.
All right. The first thing you do, definitely, it's a mental, psychological thing. You have to prep yourself. You know that you're going to go through a lot of pain, but you have to tell yourself, with all this pain, it's going to look amazing down there. It's going to feel amazing for at least a month, or just a little bit lesser. And with that in mind, just go and bear it all.
Right.
You know, like some of us women, we would be very shy about it, but no, just go there, tell yourself, this lady, she's seen everything, so I'm gonna be part of it as well.
Right.
So psych yourself. What about you guys? What do you
I
think?
agree with you. I think, like I mentioned earlier, I actually think of it as getting a manicure or pedicure. It's to beautify it, but at the same time to clean it up more for like a hygienic purpose. So it's gonna be more painful than getting a manicure, but at the end of it, the purpose of it is to be clean and be hygienic
And feel good.
And there's no need to be shy, because they're professionals and they've done this probably a million times, and you're just another customer, and they're just helping you to feel good about yourself. So there's no need to be shy or scared about it. Of course, it will be painful,
And your modesty will be
but
tested.
It really but it really depends on yourself as well, on how well. To be honest, I actually went there like one day before I got my period, which is supposed to be not advisable.
Very painful.
It was actually okay. It was not too bad. So I think it really depends on yourself, maybe on your mental strength as well.
Yes. Because apparently pain is very a mental, psychological thing, right? Yeah. What other tips do we have?
Grace.
Well, for me, I think it's very, very important to make sure you take a shower before you go for Brazilian waxing, because after you're not supposed to take shower within 24 hours, and make sure you do wash your private area, because you don't want to let your old dirts and out to your ladies. So it's a kind of a courtesy also. Yeah. So even if they clean it for you, but you still need to clean your body before you go to that. So it's very important to remember.
And for me, I think choosing the right parlor to do it, and the person that you trusted, the waxer, is definitely the most important, especially for first timer. I was quite lucky going to the strip in Mid Valley Minister of Waxing, and then the person who did it on me, she was a very professional person, and she asked me to take a deep breath every time she yanked it out, and I feel that it helps a lot. And to me, do more research on the place that you want to go. Ask your friends, people that you trusted.
Yeah, definitely, like us.
And I think for more tips, you can also watch Jen's YouTube video,
Thank you,
which
yes.
is called
Gila Jenn, hashtag Gila Jenn, and it's called How to Survive Brazilian Wax. Yes.
And I think Strip, the Ministry of Waxing, also have 2 exclusive promos right now for their lemon wax, which is has whitening properties, as well as cucumber wax, which has moisturizing properties. And they're having a promotion until the 31st of December. So go check it out. They're available in a lot of different outlets all over KL. You can check on that on their website. So that'll be all for our discussion today. I think it was a pretty fun
And anything happened.
Anything happened on Friday, that's right. So thank you so much, Jen.
Thank you very
joining
much
us
for having
today
me.
and
So much fun.
helping us out with our discussion.
Woohoo!
Awesome.